I never expected that a simple piece of furniture would change my life, but that's exactly what happened last summer. My name is Alex, and until 6 months ago, I was living what I'd call a perfectly ordinary life. I had just moved to Portland after landing a job at a local design firm, and I was still settling into my new apartment, a cozy one-bedroom with large windows that let in the perfect amount of morning light. The place came partially furnished, but I'd splurged on one item, a deep blue velvet couch that I'd fallen in love with at a local furniture store. It was slightly too big for the space, but I couldn't resist. It was comfortable, stylish, and quickly became the centerpiece of my modest living room. Little did I know that this couch would soon become much more than just a place to binge-watch shows after work. I should mention that moving to a new city in your late 20s isn't easy. Most people already have their friend groups established, and breaking into those circles can feel impossible. I'd been in Portland for about 3 months and had made a few acquaintances at work, but no one I'd consider a close friend. The weekends were the hardest, stretches of empty time that reminded me just how alone I was in this new place. I tried the usual routes to meeting people, a cooking class, a hiking group, even a wine tasting event that left me with nothing but a headache and the business card of an overly enthusiastic realtor. It was on a particularly rainy Saturday morning when my neighbor, Emma, invited me to a game night she was hosting that evening. Nothing fancy, she assured me. Just a few friends from college and some coworkers. You should definitely come. I accepted, grateful for the invitation and the chance to meet new people. What I didn't expect was that this casual game night would introduce me to someone who would turn my world upside down. Let me tell you about the first time I saw Daniel. He arrived at Emma's apartment about an hour after I did, shaking raindrops from his dark curly hair and apologizing for being late. The bus was running behind schedule, he explained with a smile that immediately caught my attention. He was tall with broad shoulders, wearing a simple gray sweater that somehow looked like it had been designed specifically for him. But it wasn't just his appearance that drew me in. It was the way he entered the room with this quiet confidence, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself. Emma introduced us as he grabbed a beer from the fridge. Daniel, this is Alex, my new neighbor. Alex, this is Daniel, my friend from college who finally decided to grace us with his presence. Daniel's laugh was warm as he extended his hand to me. Nice to meet you, Alex. Don't believe anything Emma tells you about me. His hand was warm, his grip firm, and I noticed a small tattoo of a compass on his wrist. For some reason, that detail stuck with me. Throughout the evening, I found myself gravitating toward him. We discovered we had similar taste in music, both loved hiking, and shared a slightly embarrassing addiction to reality cooking shows. The conversation flowed easily, punctuated by laughter and those moments of surprising connection when you realize someone gets your obscure references. By the end of the night, when people were starting to leave, Daniel lingered. This was fun, he said, helping Emma collect empty bottles and plates. We should hang out sometime. I tried to sound casual when I replied, yeah, definitely. We exchanged numbers, and I walked back to my apartment feeling lighter than I had in months. 2 days later, he texted me asking if I wanted to grab coffee. That coffee date turned into a walk through the Japanese garden, which turned into dinner at a small Thai restaurant. By the end of the week, we'd seen each other 3 times, each meeting stretching longer than the last as we found more and more to talk about. There was an ease between us that I hadn't experienced before. None of the awkward pauses or calculated responses that often characterize new relationships. With Daniel, I felt like I could be completely myself. It was the following Friday when he suggested coming over to my place to watch a movie. I'll bring the pizza if you provide the entertainment, he offered. I agreed immediately, then spent the next 2 hours frantically cleaning my apartment and trying to decide which movies to suggest. Should I go with a classic? Something funny? I wanted to impress him, but also didn't want to seem like I was trying too hard. In the end, I settled on a few options and tried to calm my inexplicably racing heart. Daniel arrived right on time, pizza box in one hand and a bottle of wine in the other. I wasn't sure what you preferred, so I got half pepperoni, half vegetarian, he said, setting the food down on my coffee table. His thoughtfulness wasn't lost on me. As I grabbed plates from the kitchen, I watched him take in my apartment, his eyes lingering on my bookshelf, the small collection of plants by the window, and finally, my couch. This is a great couch, he said, running his hand along the velvet surface. It looks comfortable. It is, I replied, setting the plates down. Best purchase I've made since moving here. Sometimes I fall asleep on it instead of making it to my bed. He smiled at that, sitting down and sinking into the cushions. I can see why. My apartment came with the world's most uncomfortable futon. I think it's actually made of concrete disguised as fabric. We settled in with our pizza and wine, eventually deciding on a sci-fi film neither of us had seen. As the movie played, I was acutely aware of Daniel's presence beside me. The distance between us on the couch seemed both vast and microscopic. About halfway through the film, he shifted, his arm now resting along the back of the couch behind me. It wasn't quite the yawn and stretch move from teenage dates, but it had the same effect. My pulse quickened. When the credits finally rolled, neither of us moved to turn on the lights. The room was bathed in the soft glow from my kitchen, creating a bubble of intimacy around us. Daniel turned toward me, his expression thoughtful. "Can I ask you something?" he said, his voice slightly lower than it had been during our earlier conversation. "Of course," I replied, trying to ignore the flutter in my stomach. He glanced at the couch beneath us, then back at me with a hint of mischief in his eyes. "Does this couch fold out? It seems big enough to be a sleeper." The question caught me off guard. Was he suggesting he wanted to stay over? My mind raced through the possibilities of what he might be implying. No, it doesn't fold out," I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. "But it's deep enough that it's almost like a twin bed." Daniel nodded, considering this information. Then he leaned slightly closer. "I was just curious, because I've been thinking about something all night." "What's that?" I managed to ask, very aware of how close he was now. His eyes held mine as he replied, "I've been wondering what it would be like to kiss you." The directness of his statement sent a wave of heat through me. We'd been dancing around this attraction all week, and now he'd put it into words. I took a breath, gathering my courage. "I've been wondering the same thing about you." That was all the invitation he needed. Daniel closed the distance between us, his hand gently cupping my face as his lips met mine. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, as if he was giving me space to pull away. But when I leaned into it, his other arm wrapped around my waist, drawing me closer. Time seemed to suspend as the kiss deepened. My hands found their way to his shoulders, feeling the solid warmth of him beneath his shirt. When we finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, he rested his forehead against mine. "I've wanted to do that since Emma's game night," he confessed, his thumb tracing my cheekbone. "Why did you wait so long?" I asked, smiling. His laugh was soft. "I didn't want to rush things. But tonight, sitting here with you, I couldn't wait anymore." What happened next still makes me blush when I think about it. Our conversation gave way to more kisses, each one more urgent than the last. Daniel's hands became bolder, exploring the curve of my back, the nape of my neck. When he gently pushed me back against the armrest of the couch, I went willingly, pulling him down with me. "Is this okay?" he whispered against my neck, his weight deliciously heavy on top of me. "More than okay," I assured him, my fingers threading through his hair. The couch that didn't fold out became the stage for our first intimate encounter. Daniel's touch was confident but considerate, always checking that I was comfortable, that I wanted what was happening. And I did. I wanted all of it. Wanted him with an intensity that surprised me. We moved together on that velvet surface, discovering each other's bodies with increasing urgency. At one point, as clothing was being discarded and breathing became heavier, Daniel paused, looking down at me with a mixture of desire and tenderness. "You're beautiful," he said simply, and in that moment, I believed him completely. What followed was a blur of sensation, the feel of his skin against mine, the sound of his breath catching when I touched him in just the right way, the taste of salt on his neck. We found a rhythm together, sometimes slow and deliberate, other times frantic and desperate. The couch creaked beneath us, and we laughed between kisses at the thought of what my downstairs neighbor might think. When it was over, we lay tangled together in the narrow space, my head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat gradually slow. His fingers traced lazy patterns on my back, and I felt a contentment I hadn't experienced in years. "So," Daniel said after a while, his voice rumbling under my ear, "about this couch not folding out." I propped myself up to look at him, raising an eyebrow. "Yes." His grin was playful. "I think it works just fine the way it is." I couldn't help but laugh. I'll be sure to mention that in my review of it. We stayed like that for hours, talking, touching, occasionally dozing off only to wake and find ourselves still wrapped in each other's arms. Daniel told me about growing up in Seattle with two older sisters who still tried to manage his life. I shared stories about my small hometown in Michigan and how moving to Portland had been an act of bravery I wasn't sure I possessed. We discussed our dreams, his of opening his own architecture firm someday, mine of creating a graphic novel series. In the darkness of my living room, it felt safe to reveal these parts of ourselves. Morning came with soft light filtering through my blinds and the realization that we'd spent the entire night on the couch. Daniel's arm was numb from being my pillow, and my back protested as I sat up. But the physical discomfort couldn't touch the happiness I felt seeing him there, hair tousled, eyes still heavy with sleep. "Good morning," he said, voice rough. "Any chance you have coffee?" I nodded, reluctantly extracting myself from our tangle of limbs and blankets. As I moved around the kitchen, I could feel his eyes following me. It should have made me self-conscious, padding around in just his t-shirt and my underwear, but instead, it felt natural, as if we'd done this 100 times before. Over coffee, we addressed what had happened between us. "I want you to know," Daniel said, his expression serious, "that last night wasn't just. I didn't suggest watching a movie as some kind of ploy." "I know," I assured him, touched by his concern. "And for the record, I don't usually. This isn't something I do casually." His relief was visible. "Me neither. What I'm trying to say, not very eloquently, is that I really like you, Alex. And I'd like to keep seeing you. Not just for—" He gestured toward the couch, a slight blush coloring his cheeks. "I'd like that too," I said, unable to stop the smile spreading across my face. And that's exactly what we did. Over the next few weeks, Daniel and I fell into a relationship that felt both exciting and comfortable. We explored Portland together, finding hidden bookstores and coffee shops, hiking trails with views that took our breath away. We spent evenings cooking dinner in my kitchen, arguing good-naturedly about the proper amount of garlic, his answer, "Always more, and the best way to chop onions." And yes, we spent plenty of time on my couch, sometimes watching movies, sometimes not making it through the opening credits. It became something of a running joke between us, the couch that didn't fold out, but had folded me over instead. Daniel would waggle his eyebrows suggestively whenever I mentioned needing to fluff the cushions, and I'd roll my eyes even as I blushed at the memories. But our relationship wasn't just physical. I found in Daniel someone who listened when I talked about my insecurities about my career, who encouraged me to submit my illustrations to local galleries. He confided in me about his complicated relationship with his father, who had never understood why Daniel chose architecture over joining the family business. We supported each other through work stress and family drama, celebrated small victories, and comforted each other through disappointments. 3 months after that first night on the couch, Daniel left a toothbrush at my apartment. A month after that, he had his own drawer in my dresser. 6 months in, we were discussing whether his lease was worth renewing or if maybe, just maybe, it made more sense for him to move in with me. The commute would be better, he reasoned as we sat on the couch, our couch now, one evening. And we already spend most nights together anyway. True, I agreed, trying to sound practical while my heart raced at the prospect. Plus, you hate your apartment. I do hate my apartment, he laughed. Though I should warn you, if I move in, I'm bringing my book collection. All of it. I pretended to consider this carefully. I suppose we could make room. But what about your concrete futon? Daniel pulled me closer, pressing a kiss to my temple. I think we can leave that behind. This couch has served us pretty well, wouldn't you say? Looking around at the life we were building together, the photos of us now displayed on my walls, the blend of our belongings creating something new, I couldn't help but marvel at how much had changed because of one piece of furniture and one brave question. "Yeah," I said, leaning into his embrace. "This couch has served us very well indeed." And as Daniel's arms tightened around me, I silently thanked whatever furniture store employee had convinced me that this slightly too big velvet couch was exactly what my new apartment needed. They couldn't have known they were selling me not just a piece of furniture, but the setting for the beginning of the most important relationship of my life. Sometimes the most significant changes come from the most unexpected places. In my case, it was a couch that didn't fold out, but instead became the foundation for something that would unfold beautifully over time. A love story I never saw coming. with a man who saw me completely and loved what he found. So if you're wondering whether that piece of furniture is worth the splurge, or if you should ask that question you've been holding back, let me be the one to tell you. Take the chance. You never know what might happen when you do. The best adventures often begin with the simplest decisions, like buying a couch, or asking if it folds out, or saying yes to where that question might lead. Total_char_count, 17,902.